In a silent hotel room, Steph Curry empties his pockets after a long day. His fingers find a folded piece of paper, given to him hours earlier by a small black girl who could barely look him in the eye. As he unfolds the note written in childlike handwriting and marked with small, dry stains, his expression changes. The first tear falls before he even finishes reading the second line. The sun had barely risen when Zoe Johnson opened her eyes that Thursday morning. At 11 years old, she had already developed the habit of waking before the alarm clock. Not from anxiety about going to school, but to check if her grandmother had passed the night well. "Grandma," she called softly, opening the door to the room next door. Margaret Johnson, 67 years old, was sitting on the edge of the bed, a bottle of pills in one hand and a half-empty glass of water in the other. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tried to open the child-proof cap. "Good morning, my angel," she replied with a tired smile. "Already up? It's still early." Zoe rushed to help, taking the bottle from her grandmother's wrinkled hands with the ease of someone who had been doing this for a long time. "Let me help you, Grandma. Is it the blood pressure medicine or the diabetes one?" "Both, dear. Today is the day for both." The small house in Oakland they shared had been a happy home for 3 generations of the Johnson family. Now, after the accident that took Zoe's parents 3 years ago, only grandmother and granddaughter remained, united by a love that grew daily in the face of adversity. Margaret had been a nurse for 4 decades before retiring. She was a woman who had dedicated her life to caring for strangers and now found herself in the position of needing care. The irony didn't escape her, just as it didn't escape the attentive gaze of her 11-year-old granddaughter. "Did you have breakfast, Grandma?" "Not yet, dear. I was waiting for you to wake up." "I'll make it," said Zoe with the seriousness of an adult disguised in a child's body. "You need to eat something with your diabetes medicine. Remember what the doctor said." In the small, organized kitchen, Zoe moved with familiarity, preparing toast and tea for her grandmother. On the refrigerator, a photo attached with magnets showed a complete family. Zoe, at 8 years old, smiling between her parents and grandmother. Next to the photo, a calendar marked with red circles on medical appointment dates and a large X marking the day when rent was due. While setting the table, Zoe glanced at the clock. She needed to hurry not to miss the school bus, but would never leave without seeing her grandmother take her breakfast and medications correctly. "Are you okay, Grandma?" she asked, noticing how Margaret discreetly massaged her chest. "Yes, my love. Just tired." "Age catches up with everyone," she answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Zoe knew it wasn't just age. The night before, she had woken up thirsty and, upon going to the kitchen, found her grandmother sitting at the table with several bills spread out in front of her, some marked in red with "Final Notice." Margaret was wiping away silent tears while cutting one of her pills in half, storing the other part in a separate container. "Why are you cutting your medicine, Grandma?" Zoe asked from the kitchen doorway, startling Margaret. "My goodness, child, you scared me." Her grandmother tried to hide it, quickly putting away the papers. "It's nothing, just... I'm trying to make it last a little longer until the next pension check." But Zoe understood more than her grandmother imagined. In meetings with the social worker who occasionally visited, she heard about limited resources, assistance options, and budget cuts, which meant that Margaret had to choose between full medication, rent on time, or adequate food. That night, after returning to bed, Zoe cried silently into her pillow. Not for what she lacked. Love had never been scarce in that house, but for feeling powerless in the face of her grandmother's suffering. In the simple but impeccably organized room, posters of the Golden State Warriors, especially of Steph Curry, covered one wall. For Zoe, Curry wasn't just an extraordinary basketball player, but a symbol of overcoming obstacles. She knew his story, how he was underestimated because of his physique, how he worked harder than everyone to prove his worth, how his determination transformed him into one of the greatest players of all time. If he managed to succeed being smaller than the others, thought Zoe, as she dried her tears, maybe I can too, even if I'm just a child. The following morning, after making sure her grandmother had taken her medications and eaten properly, Zoe prepared for school. While gathering her books, she saw the local newspaper on the table with a highlighted news item. Warriors promote charity basketball clinic in Oakland, Steph Curry confirmed. Her heart raced. The clinic would take place in just 3 days at the community center a few blocks from her house. There was a lottery for free participation for local children. "Grandma, look at this!" she exclaimed, showing the newspaper to Margaret. "Curry is going to be here in Oakland." Margaret smiled, genuinely happy to see her granddaughter's enthusiasm. "Would you like to enter the lottery, dear?" "Can I really? But what if I win? Who will stay with you during the afternoon?" "Well, child, I'm not an invalid yet," Margaret pretended indignation. "I can be alone for a few hours. Besides," she added with a sparkle in her eyes, "I would love to see you learning from your idol." That same afternoon, after school, Zoe filled out the online form at the public library. While waiting for the page to load on the slow internet, an idea began to form in her mind. Even if she didn't win the lottery to participate in the clinic, maybe she could find a way to deliver a message to Curry. Back home, while her grandmother napped on the sofa with the television on low volume, Zoe took her nicest notebook and tore out a page. With her best handwriting, she began to write a note. She erased and started over several times. The words needed to be perfect. When she finally finished, she carefully folded the paper and put it in her backpack. By her bed, she began braiding colored threads, blue and yellow for the Warriors, with a single red thread interwoven. "Red is the color of courage, Zoe," her grandmother used to say, "and also the color of the heart." She would need both for what she was planning to do. The morning of the basketball clinic dawned clear and sunny, as if the sky itself was conspiring in favor of Zoe's plans. Checking her emails at the school library during recess, her heart sank. Her name wasn't on the list of those selected to participate in the event. "It's okay," she thought, determined. "I can still try to see him from outside." At home, she found her grandmother having another dizzy spell, clutching the kitchen table for balance. Margaret insisted it was just fatigue, but Zoe knew better. In recent days, she had discreetly counted the pills in her grandmother's medication bottle. She was taking only half the prescribed dose to make the medicine last longer. "Grandma, are you really okay? Because I can stay home today instead of going to see Curry," she offered, biting her lip with concern. "No way." Margaret straightened up, forcing firmness in her voice. "I've already arranged with Mrs. Jackson. She'll take you there. I don't want you missing the chance to see your idol just because your old grandmother is a little tired." Mrs. Jackson was a neighbor and longtime friend of the family. At 72 years old, she still drove her old Buick with the confidence of someone who knew every street in the neighborhood like the back of her hand. "Ready to see the basketball star, little one?" she asked when Zoe got into her car that afternoon. "Yes, ma'am," replied Zoe, clutching her backpack on her lap. Inside it, the carefully written note and the friendship bracelet made with so much care. The community center was full of energy when they arrived. Children wearing Warriors t-shirts formed an excited line to enter, while parents and guardians waited on the sides. Security guards checked invitations at the entrance. "Oh dear, it seems only those with invitations can enter," observed Mrs. Jackson with disappointment. "That's okay. Can we wait out here? Maybe we can see something through the windows," suggested Zoe, trying to hide her disappointment. They positioned themselves next to one of the large side windows of the gymnasium. Inside, Zoe could see children her age receiving instructions from technical assistants, all wearing official Warriors uniforms. Her heart accelerated when she recognized the unmistakable figure of Steph Curry entering the gymnasium, smiling and waving to the small crowd that applauded him enthusiastically. "It's him, Mrs. Jackson! It's Curry!" she exclaimed, pointing through the glass. For almost an hour, Zoe watched fascinated as her idol taught shooting techniques, shared tips, and played with the children. Sometimes, when he approached the window, she pressed her face against the glass, imagining what it would be like to be inside. "Hey, you're Zoe Johnson, aren't you?" The female voice surprised her. Turning around, Zoe saw a middle-aged woman with an event organization badge. "Yes, ma'am," she replied timidly. "I'm Tracy Williams, social worker. I met you and your grandmother Margaret last year, remember? How is she?" Mrs. Jackson intervened, briefly explaining Margaret's situation while Zoe listened, embarrassed. She didn't like when adults talked about her grandmother's problems as if she weren't present or didn't understand. "Zoe tried the lottery to participate, but we couldn't get a spot," explained Mrs. Jackson. Tracy looked at the girl, noticing how her eyes never left the interior of the gymnasium, where Curry was now demonstrating a dribbling technique. "What do you have in your backpack, dear?" she asked, noticing how Zoe was holding the bag tightly. I wrote a note for Mr. Curry," admitted Zoe, blushing. "And I made a bracelet too." She hesitated before adding, "It's about my grandmother. She needs help, but she's too proud to ask." Tracy felt her heart tighten. In her years as a social worker, she had met many elderly people like Margaret, proud, independent, sacrificing their own health to avoid being a burden. And children like Zoe, prematurely matured by the weight of responsibilities that shouldn't be theirs. "Look," she finally said, "I can't promise anything. But when the event ends, I'll try to help you deliver that note. He has many commitments and strict security. But let's try, okay?" Zoe's face lit up with a smile that reminded Tracy of why she loved her job, despite all the difficulties. The event continued for another hour. When it finally ended, the children began leaving the gymnasium, many displaying autographs and phones with precious selfies. Curry, surrounded by advisors and security guards, was heading toward a side exit. "Come with me, quickly," Tracy signaled to Zoe, who momentarily said goodbye to Mrs. Jackson and followed the social worker. Tracy led Zoe through a side corridor, using her badge to pass through some doors. "Wait here," she instructed, positioning the girl near a service door. "He'll pass by here on his way to the parking lot. I can't guarantee he'll stop, but it's your best chance." Zoe's heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her hands trembled as she held the colored bracelet and the carefully folded note. Suddenly, the door opened and Steph Curry appeared, talking with one of the organizers, closely followed by a security guard. Tracy quickly approached. "Mr. Curry, sorry to interrupt. This is Zoe, a big fan. She came to watch the event from outside because she couldn't get a spot, and she has something she'd really like to give you." Curry, accustomed to fan approaches, smiled politely. The security guard seemed impatient, checking his watch, but the player gestured for him to wait a moment. "Hello, Zoe," he said, lowering himself a bit to be closer to the girl's height. "Did you enjoy the event?" Zoe opened her mouth, but no sound came out. All the words she had rehearsed evaporated in front of her idol's kind gaze. Instead of speaking, she extended her trembling hands, offering the colored bracelet and the folded note. I made this for you," she finally managed to say, her voice almost a whisper. "Please read it when you have time." Curry seemed momentarily surprised by the little girl's seriousness. He took the items, noting the care with which the bracelet had been braided. Blue and yellow for the warriors, with a single red thread interwoven. "Thank you, Zoe. Did you make this bracelet yourself?" "It's very beautiful," he commented, genuinely impressed with the handcrafted work. Zoe just nodded, words stuck in her throat from emotion. "Mr. Curry, we need to continue," the security guard gently intervened. "Of course," the player responded. Looking again at Zoe, he added, "I'll read your note, I promise. Thank you for watching the training today, even from outside." And then he was gone, putting the bracelet and the note in the side pocket of his jacket. Tracy placed her hand on Zoe's shoulder, who remained motionless, watching her idol disappear down the corridor. "You were very brave," said the social worker. "Do you think he'll actually read it?" asked Zoe, her voice small and hopeful. "I hope so, dear. I hope so." While returning to Mrs. Jackson's car, Zoe felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. She had done her part, placed in Steph Curry's hands a little piece of her heart and her grandmother's daily struggle. Now, she could only wait and believe. "How was it?" asked Mrs. Jackson, curious. "He's even nicer in person," Zoe answered simply. "And he promised to read my note." During the entire journey back home, the girl kept her eyes fixed on the car window, watching the familiar streets of Oakland pass in flashes. She thought about her grandmother, her medications cut in half, the bills marked in red, and how her smile only appeared during Warriors games. She had done everything she could. The rest was in the hands of fate, and Steph Curry's. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 11:47 when Steph Curry finally entered his hotel room. The day had been long, the charity clinic in the morning, meetings with sponsors in the afternoon, and a dinner with league executives at night. His tired body craved the comfort of the bed, but his mind was still processing the day's events. As he emptied his pockets, placing keys, phone, and wallet on the table, his fingers found something unexpected: a folded piece of paper and a small, colored bracelet. For a moment, he frowned, confused, until he remembered the little girl in the side corridor of the community center. Curry sat on the edge of the bed, twirling the handmade bracelet between his fingers. It was simple work, clearly made by childish hands, but there was something touching about the combination of colors: blue and yellow for the warriors, with a single red thread interwoven. The evident dedication in the small gift made him smile. With curiosity, he unfolded the note. The first thing he noticed were small stains on the paper. Were they tears? The handwriting was clearly childish. Some words had been erased and rewritten several times, evidencing the care in composition. He began to read, "Dear Mr. Curry, my name is Zoe Johnson, and I am 11 years old. The lady who helped me deliver this to you said I should be quick. So sorry if my handwriting isn't nice. My grandmother Margaret is all I have in the world since my parents went to live with the angels 3 years ago. She used to be a nurse and helped many people. But now, she is the one who needs help. Last week, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw her in the kitchen cutting her pills in half. She was crying silently. When I asked what was happening, she hugged me tight and said that sometimes medicine needs to be economized, just like money. It was the first time I saw my grandmother seem so small and scared. Curry paused reading for a moment, the vivid image of an elderly lady cutting medicine in secret, hitting him like a physical blow. He took a deep breath and continued. Yesterday, she had to hold onto the table because she got dizzy. She thought I didn't see, but I always see. I'm so afraid of losing her too. On nights when I can't sleep, I hear her coughing and wonder if tomorrow she'll still be there to say good morning to me. Mr. Curry, I watch you play and think about how you never give up, even when you're tired or hurt. My grandmother is like that too. She never complains, even when I know it hurts. When we watch your games together, it's the only time she forgets about the bills and the medicine. It's the only time I see that smile she had in photos with my parents. An unexpected emotion tightened the athlete's throat. As a father of 3 children, the innocence and maturity simultaneously present in the girl's words touched him deeply. He continued reading. I'm not asking for money or gifts. I just wanted you to know that some people, like my grandmother, are champions every day, even without trophies. And when she smiles watching you play, it's as if for a minute, all pain disappears. The bracelet I made for you has blue and yellow for the warriors, but it also has a red thread in the middle. My grandmother taught me that red is the color of courage and heart. She has a lot of both. If one day you feel like giving up on something, remember, there's a grandmother in Oakland who struggles to take medicine every day, even when it hurts, even when money is scarce, just to be able to stay one more day with me. And that, Mr. Curry, to me is more impressive than any 3-point shot. With much respect and admiration, Zoe Johnson. P.S. Sorry for the stains on the paper. They weren't meant to be tears, but it happened. Curry realized that his own hands were trembling slightly. He reread the note, paying attention to each word, imagining little Zoe writing it, probably at night, while her grandmother slept. It wasn't unusual to receive letters and notes from fans, hundreds, weekly. Most contained requests for autographs, photos, meetings, tickets, or even money. But this was different. The girl wasn't asking for anything for herself. She just wanted him to know about her grandmother, an anonymous champion fighting her daily battles. Curry got up and walked to the window of the room, observing the lights of Oakland in the distance. Somewhere down there, an 11-year-old girl might be awake, worried about her grandmother's breathing in the room next door. Without thinking twice, he picked up his phone and dialed. Isha, I know it's late, but I need to read something to you, he said when his wife answered, his voice still choked with emotion. Steph, is everything okay? Are you crying? Asked Isha, immediately concerned. I'm fine. It's just, I need you to hear this. Curry began to read Zoe's note to his wife, his voice failing at various moments. When he finished, the silence on the other end of the line lasted a few seconds. Steph, Isha finally spoke, her own voice trembling. We need to find this girl and her grandmother. Yes, he agreed, looking at the colored bracelet in his hand, the red thread of courage standing out. I'll talk to the foundation team first thing tomorrow. I want to visit them personally before we leave Oakland. After hanging up, Curry couldn't sleep immediately. He lay in the darkness of the hotel room, thinking about little Zoe and how, at 11 years old, she already demonstrated a wisdom and compassion that many adults never achieved. In his mind, he reviewed the scene in the corridor. the small, shy girl, her large eyes full of hope as she handed him that piece of paper that had now changed his night, and possibly much more. Before falling asleep, he put the colored bracelet on his wrist, the red thread contrasting with the warrior's colors. Courage and heart, he murmured to himself, remembering Zoe's words. Tomorrow, he would decide how to help Margaret Johnson and her extraordinary granddaughter. In the morning, even before breakfast, Steph Curry met with Amanda Peters, executive director of the charity foundation that he and his wife maintained. "We need to find this girl, Zoe Johnson, and her grandmother Margaret," he explained, handing her the note. "They live here in Oakland. The grandmother is retired, a former nurse, has health problems, diabetes and hypertension, from what I understand, and they're experiencing financial difficulties." Amanda read the note, her professional expression visibly softening as she progressed through the text. "I'll contact Tracy Williams, mentioned here. She must be the social worker who helped the girl. If she works at the community center where the event was held, we can find her easily." "Great," replied Curry, visibly relieved. "I want to visit them today, before our return flight. And, Amanda," he briefly hesitated, "I want to establish a medical assistance program for Mrs. Johnson, not just a one-time donation, but something that ensures she never has to cut pills in half again." "And an educational fund for Zoe?" suggested Amanda, already familiar with her boss's patterns of generosity. "Yes," agreed Curry. "And one more thing, I want to wear the bracelet she gave me in today's game. Can you notify the marketing and social media department? Without much explanation yet, just a photo. I want it to be a surprise for them." As Amanda left to make the necessary arrangements, Curry looked again at the bracelet on his wrist. In his career, he had won championships, MVPs, records, and worldwide acclaim. But at that moment, the small colored braid made by childish hands represented something perhaps even more valuable, a reminder of the real impact he could have beyond the courts. The afternoon was beginning to fall when Zoe returned from school, walking the 3 blocks that separated the bus stop from her house. In her backpack, besides books, she carried a sheet with perfect scores on the math test, her favorite subject. She could hardly wait to show her grandmother, who always said that numbers are the language of the universe. Turning the corner of her street, Zoe noticed something strange. A large, dark car, clearly not belonging to the neighborhood, parked in front of her house. For a moment, fear tightened her chest. Was it some eviction officer? Or worse, someone coming with bad news about her grandmother's health? She quickened her pace, almost running the last few meters to the entrance. Opening the door, unfamiliar voices came from the small living room. "Grandma," she called, dropping her backpack on the corridor floor. "We're in here, dear," responded Margaret, her voice sounding strangely animated. Zoe entered the room and froze at the entrance. Sitting on the couch was her grandmother, with an expression that mixed shock and joy. Beside her, Tracy, the social worker from the community center, and an unknown woman in an elegant suit. But what really made her heart almost stop was the figure sitting in the opposite armchair. Steph Curry in person, with the bracelet she had made clearly visible on his wrist. "Hello, Zoe," said Curry, rising with a genuine smile. "I hope you don't mind our surprise visit." Zoe opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her legs seemed to have turned to jelly. "Dear," intervened Margaret, extending her hand to her granddaughter, "Mr. Curry read your note and came to visit us. Isn't that wonderful?" Still unable to speak, Zoe approached her grandmother as if in a trance, grabbing her hand as an anchor in a reality that seemed to have transformed into an impossible dream. "Your note touched me deeply, Zoe," said Curry, his voice gentle, quite different from the animated tone he used in interviews after games. "I wanted to thank you personally and meet the champion you described so well. You..." Zoe finally found her voice, still incredulous. "You really read it?" "I read it. More than once," replied Curry, extending the carefully folded note he took from his pocket. "And I also read it to my wife over the phone." "And cried both times," added the woman in the suit with a small smile. "Amanda," protested Curry, feigning indignation before smiling. "Well, yes, I cried. Your words were very powerful, Zoe, and very true." Margaret squeezed her granddaughter's hand, her own eyes watery. "My little granddaughter wrote this without telling me anything. I only found out today when they showed up here." The woman in the suit, who introduced herself as Amanda Peters from the Curry Foundation, explained that they had contacted Tracy to locate Zoe and Margaret. "Steph insisted on coming personally after reading your note," she explained. "Zoe," Curry leaned slightly forward, looking directly into the girl's eyes, "your grandmother told me more about you two while we were waiting for you to arrive. About how she was a nurse for 40 years, about how excellent you are at math, and about how you watch all our games together." Zoe just nodded, still processing the fact that her idol was sitting in her living room, wearing the bracelet she had made, talking about her life as if he really cared. "Our foundation wants to help you both," continued Curry. "We want to create a medical assistance program for your grandmother, ensuring she has all the medications and care she needs for the next few years." Margaret brought her free, hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. "And for you, Zoe," he continued, "we want to establish an educational fund for your future, so you can pursue your dreams, whether in math, basketball, or any other area." "Why?" The question escaped from Zoe's lips before she could contain it. "Why are you doing this for us?" Curry seemed momentarily surprised by the direct question, but then smiled with genuine admiration. "Because your note reminded me of what really matters," he answered sincerely. "You know, Zoe, sometimes we get lost in success, headlines, records. We forget that the real impact isn't just in what we do on the courts, but in how we can touch lives off them." He raised his wrist, showing the bracelet. "You wrote that red represents courage and heart. Your grandmother has both, as you said. But you have them too, Zoe. The courage to write that note, to fight for your grandmother even being so young. That inspired me." Margaret could no longer contain her tears, and Zoe, finally overcoming the initial shock, also felt her eyes fill with water. "Can I give you a hug?" she asked timidly. In response, Curry opened his arms, and Zoe advanced for a hug she would never forget. For a few seconds, she wasn't just a fan hugging her idol. She was a child, finding comfort in someone who had understood her pain and responded with compassion. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. "Grandma is all I have." "I know," he responded softly. "And now you two have our family too." When they separated, Curry asked excitedly, "So, I heard you practice shooting every day. Can I see your technique?" The backyard, with its improvised basket nailed to an old post, had never received such an illustrious visit. While Margaret, Tracy, and Amanda watched from the small porch, Steph Curry, the greatest shooter in NBA history, played one-on-one with an 11-year-old girl on a cracked piece of concrete in Oakland. To everyone's surprise and delight, Zoe hit 3 consecutive shots her technique clearly inspired by Curry's videos that she watched obsessively. "Wow!" exclaimed Curry, genuinely impressed. "You have a natural touch, Zoe. Who taught you?" "You taught me," she answered simply. "I watch your videos at the library and practice every day." Curry shook his head, visibly touched. "Well, your technique is better than many professional players I know. How would you feel about a professional coach visiting you regularly? I can arrange that." Zoe's eyes widened. "Really?" "Absolutely. And I have one more surprise." He took 2 tickets from his pocket and handed them to Zoe. "They're for tonight's game. Special seats, very close to the court. For you and your grandmother." Margaret, who was watching from the porch, began to protest. "Oh, but I don't think I can—" "We've already taken care of everything," Amanda gently interrupted. "Private transportation, adapted seats, and a nurse who will be discreetly nearby should you need any assistance." Curry looked at his watch. "I need to go for the pre-game warm-up now, but a limousine will come to pick you up at 6 p.m. As they prepared to leave, Curry turned to Zoe one last time. "I'll be wearing your bracelet during the game. It's my new lucky charm." "You don't believe in lucky charms," replied Zoe, surprising everyone with her knowledge. "You said in an interview that you believe in hard work and dedication, not luck." Curry laughed, delighted with the response. "You are absolutely right, but I do believe in reminders of what really matters." He touched the bracelet on his wrist. "Courage and heart, right?" "Courage and heart," repeated Zoe, smiling. Hours later, sitting in privileged seats in the arena, Zoe and Margaret could hardly believe the change that a simple note had brought to their lives. When the players entered for warm-up, Curry immediately located them in the crowd and came to the side of the court. "Ready for the show?" he asked with a smile, pointing to the bracelet on his wrist, clearly visible under the bright lights of the arena. Photographers captured the moment. Steph Curry chatting animatedly with a grandmother and her granddaughter in the front row, without knowing the story behind that interaction. Margaret, who had taken her complete medications for the first time in weeks, thanks to the immediate intervention of the foundation, held Zoe's hand as the lights dimmed for the players' presentation. "You did this, my love," she whispered to her granddaughter, her voice choked with emotion. "Your courage did this." "No, Grandma," replied Zoe, her eyes fixed on Curry's figure who was waving to the crowd, the colored bracelet standing out on his wrist. "We both did it. Courage and heart, remember?" When Steph Curry's name was announced and the arena erupted in applause, he looked directly at them and made a small gesture, touching the wrist where the bracelet was and then pointing to his own heart. At that moment, under the intense lights of an NBA arena, a simple truth was revealed. Sometimes, the most important victories don't happen on the courts, but in the small gestures of courage that connect unlikely people and transform lives forever. Little Zoe Johnson, who had written a note with tears of concern, now cried tears of joy. And on her wrist, a new blue and yellow bracelet with a single red thread interwoven. A gift that Steph Curry had brought for her, identical to his own, symbolizing a connection that transcended fame and fortune, courage and heart. In Oakland, in a small wooden house or in an illuminated arena, the meaning was the same.